The fluorescent lights in Veritas Biolab's conference room buzzed like a jury delivering judgment, their cold glow pooling over the polished mahogany table. I sat in my navy blazer, the same one I'd worn on my first day 15 years ago, its familiar way to tether to a time when this place felt like home. My hands clasped tightly in my lap, fingers brushing the edge of my notebook, a nervous habit I'd never shaken. Dr. Charles Maddox's voice sliced through the sterile air, sharp as a blade. "This is an absolute disgrace, Evelyn. Your negligence just cost us $8.4 million. 24 pairs of eyes turned to me, colleagues I'd mentored, shared late-night breakthroughs with, trusted like family. Some widened in shock, others narrowed with relief that the spotlight wasn't on them. My chest tightened, a dull ache spreading as if a vial had shattered inside me. This wasn't just an accusation. It was the unraveling of everything I'd built. What was meant to be a quarterly staff meeting had become my public execution. Maddox paced behind his leather chair, a prosecutor savoring his verdict. "The NIAID pulled the grant this morning due to significant irregularities in our compliance documentation. Documentation you were responsible for, Dr. Drake." His words hit like a physical blow, my hands trembling slightly in my lap. I wanted to stand, to hurl the binder of lab protocols at his smug face, to scream that I'd given 15 years to Veritas, flawless audits, sleepless nights, a heart poured into every procedure. But I sat frozen, jaw clenched, because I knew this wasn't about truth. It was about sacrifice. I thought of my father, his voice steady as he taught me in his basement lab years ago. "Evidence is your anchor, Evie." He'd be watching now, his chemist's eyes narrowing at Maddox's lies. The memory steadied me, but it couldn't dull the sting of betrayal. 15 years ago, I'd walked into Veritas inspired by Dr. Helen Sinclair's vision of science as a beacon of integrity. I'd built systems, trained scientists, upheld protocols through every challenge. But Orbis Pharma's takeover had changed everything. Quality was a relic, speed was king. And I, once the lab's moral spine, had become dead weight. "As of today," Maddox said, his voice cold as liquid nitrogen, "Dr. Evelyn Drake is no longer with Veritas Biolabs. Her office will be cleared by end of day. No chance to explain. No review. Just a decree, final as a slammed door." I stood, slow and deliberate, brushing imaginary lint from my blazer, the silence heavier than gravity. My throat tightened as I caught Dr. Isla Mercer's face through the glass wall of the adjacent lab. Her eyes flickered with guilt before she looked away. We'd shared coffee breaks, late-night data reviews, dreams of curing diseases. Now her silence cut deeper than Maddox's words. They'd planned this, and they watched me fall, complicit, spineless. But they didn't know I'd been keeping records. In my bag, my black leather notebook felt like a lifeline, its pages heavy with truth. As I walked out, Leo Navarro's hesitant wave from the lab caught my eye, a small kindness that nearly undid me. I nodded back, clutching the notebook tighter. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. My heels echoed down the sterile corridor, each step a metronome marking the end of an era. Whispers trailed from the conference room, but I didn't turn back. I wouldn't let them see the tears threatening to spill. Not after what they'd done. In my office, the door creaked shut, and the faint scent of eucalyptus from my diffuser wrapped around me like a fading memory. This room had been my sanctuary, where I'd pinned photos of my first team laughing at a holiday party, kept a lab excellence plaque, tucked away a note from Helen Sinclair thanking me for my steadfast heart. Now it felt like a stranger's space, hollow and cold. I locked the door and let the mask fall. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a fury I'd held back for months. My chest ached with the betrayal I'd swallowed in silence. I thought of my father, his calloused hands guiding mine as we mixed compounds in his basement, his voice warm. "Science is truth, Evie. Never let anyone take that from you." He died 3 years ago, but his pride in my work at Veritas had been a light I'd carried. Now that light flickered, dimmed by Maddox's lies and Isla's silence. I wasn't built on anger alone. I trusted facts. Always had. Kneeling by my desk, I opened the bottom drawer. Beneath outdated manuals lay a plain black notebook, unmarked, unassuming. My ledger. 15 weeks of entries. Dates, times, observations. Deviations from protocol that never made official reports. Chemical logs altered. Approvals signed with my name. At times, I wasn't even in the building. I hadn't wanted to believe it. Isla's miracle arthritis trial results? The rushed compound intervals? The updated containment procedures for volatile reagents? Each entry had been a wound, a betrayal of the Veritas I'd loved, a place where we'd once stayed late debating ethics over cold pizza, where I'd taught Leo Navarro to double-check every vial. But I'd written it all down, because that's what my father taught me. Truth lives in the details. A soft knock startled me. Dr. Drake? It was Leo, his earnest face a reminder of the hope I'd once felt here. I opened the door a crack, my throat tight, his cheeks flushed with worry. I heard what happened. Are you okay? No, I said, my voice catching. I stepped aside to let him in. But I will be. He glanced at the box I'd started packing, the team photo, the plaque, Helen's note. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw my younger self in him. Idealistic, trusting. Do you need help? Thank you, Leo, but I've got it. I handed him a small envelope, my hand brushing his. Keep your own records, especially around the chemical logs. His eyes widened. That's what this is about, isn't it? Among other things, I said softly. He nodded, gripping the envelope like a vow, and slipped out. His quiet support lingered, a small warmth against the cold. Alone again, I opened my laptop and scanned the security logs. 3 approvals under my ID, time-stamped when I was home, asleep. Then I froze. 1 entry signed by a scientist who'd left Veritas 2 years ago. A sloppy mistake. Their mistake. I set the notebook beside me, my father's old fountain pen catching the light, a gift he'd given me when I joined Veritas. I started typing, the pen's presence a quiet promise. They thought they'd buried me, but I was planting evidence.
And it would grow.
That evening, my kitchen table became a war room, the lamplight casting soft shadows across my notes. The last light of day slipped behind Toledo's rooftops, and I felt a kinship with the quiet streets below, as if they too were waiting for justice. My ledger's pages spread out like evidence in a courtroom. Handwritten notes, printed emails, screenshots, memos, access logs. The anatomy of a cover-up. I sipped coffee, its warmth a faint echo of evenings with my father, when we'd sit at our oak table reading science journals, his voice animated as he explained molecular bonds. Every detail matters, Evie, he'd say, his pen scratching notes in a leather-bound journal. I'd found that journal after his death, tucked in his study, its margins filled with dreams for my future. Tonight, it sat beside my ledger, a silent ally. I'd archived emails under budget notes, a digital vault no one thought I'd kept. One from Maddox, 2 days before the grant denial, admitting an optics issue with Mercer's data. Another from Isla, nervously asking if I'd adjusted the chemical logs yet. Her words stung, a reminder of our late-night talks, her laughter, once a balm after long days. Now it was a ghost. 3 months ago, Mercer's arthritis trial had been fast-tracked for Orbis Pharma's investors. Safety protocols were skipped, hazardous compounds cleared in 8 hours instead of 24, with my name on the approvals. But I hadn't been there. The access logs confirmed it. My badge scanned at 3:17 a.m. 3 nights in a row. I was home, asleep, dreaming of the old Veritas, where we'd celebrated breakthroughs with cheap wine and shared purpose. My hands curled into fists, my father's pen glinting in the lamplight. 15 years, and they thought they could erase me. I paused, opening his journal to a page I'd bookmarked. Integrity is a choice, Evie. Make it every day. The words steadied me, grounding me in the values he'd instilled. I thought of my mother, too, her quiet strength as she'd sewn my blazer's hem before my first day at Veritas. You're ready for anything, she'd said, her hands warm on mine. Their faith carried me now. I opened a blank document and wrote. First, a letter to the Veritas Ethics Committee, 3 pages, clear and devastating, naming Maddox and Mercer with evidence. Naming Isla hurt, each keystroke a reminder of our shared dreams. Then, an OSHA report listing every violation: compound mishandling, exposure risks, missing containment. Screenshots, logs, policies attached. As I worked, an old email surfaced from a retired colleague, Margaret Voss, warning me about Orbis Pharma's influence months ago. "They'll chew up Veritas," she'd written. I dismissed it then, too loyal to my lab. Now it was a lifeline, Margaret's wisdom a bridge to my father's. By midnight, the files were done, airtight, every claim backed. I stood at my window, the Toledo street below calm and waiting. I whispered, "This one's for Dad," my voice breaking. The journal lay open, his handwriting a quiet presence. I laid out my navy blazer for tomorrow, my mother's stitches still holding strong. Not for them. For the record. Morning light sliced through my kitchen blinds, sharp and unforgiving. I sipped coffee, the manila envelope of evidence beside me. Printed, checked, sealed. My heart was steady, but it carried the weight of loss. Not just a job, but a home. Veritas had been my family, my purpose. Now it was a battlefield. In my navy blazer, I walked into Veritas, my father's pen in my pocket, a talisman. Diane, the receptionist, paled, her eyes darting away. "Dr. Drake," I thought. "Just dropping something off," I said, placing the envelope on her desk with quiet finality. "For the board. It's important." I turned to leave, my chest tight with the urge to run, when a voice stopped me. "Evelyn, wait." Dr. Isla Mercer stood there, breathless, her lab coat askew, eyes red and haunted. Her presence hit like a wave, memories flooding back, her teasing me about my eucalyptus diffuser, our shared pride in a successful audit. "Can we talk?" "Privately?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I followed her to the conference room, the one where they'd tore me apart. She shut the door, and I saw her hands tremble, mirroring my own. She looked like a woman staring into a void. "What happened wasn't fair," she said, her voice breaking. "Charles shouldn't have. But you didn't stop him." I cut in, my voice sharper than I meant. My chest ached, the hurt spilling out. "You stayed quiet, Isla. After everything we shared, years, dreams, trust." Her eyes welled up, a tear spilling down her cheek. I nearly reached for her, the instinct to comfort still strong, but I stopped myself. "I didn't know it would go this far," she whispered. "You falsified logs," I said, my voice low, steady, but heavy with grief. "You altered trial results. You let them use my name. That's how far it went." She flinched, sinking into a chair, her hands covering her face. "It was Charles. He said we had to speed up for Orbis, that you were slowing us down." "Those slow checks keep our work honest," I said, my voice catching as I thought of the patients who trusted us, the scientists I'd trained. "They protect lives, Isla. You knew that." "We both did." Her sobs filled the silence, and I felt my own eyes burn. I remember my mother's words when I'd faced a high school bully. "Strength isn't hating, Evie. It's holding your truth." I wanted to hate Isla, but all I felt was sorrow for what we'd lost. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I already did it," I said, my hand steady now, though my heart wasn't. "The truth's with the ethics board, OSHA, and NIH. They'll find everything, including your part." Her face drained of color. "You named me? I named everyone responsible. With proof." Silence stretched, heavy with regret. I saw Leo through the glass, his worried glance nearly undoing me. I wanted to stay, to fix this, but there was no fixing betrayal. "What have you done?" Isla whispered. "My job," I said, my voice soft but firm. "The one we both swore to do." I walked out, my hands shaking, my father's pen a quiet weight in my pocket. A text from Leo pinged my phone. "Found another log discrepancy, same pattern."
Sent it to you. His courage steadied me.
By the time I got home, news alerts lit up my screen. OSHA inspects Veritas Biolabs after whistleblower complaint. I stood by my window, watching the wind stir the trees, and let a tear fall. Not for them, but for the Veritas I'd loved. My mother's voice echoed. You're ready for anything. I was. 2 days passed, a blur of calls and emails, apologies, threats, misunderstandings. I ignored them, my heart too raw to engage. My evidence spoke louder than I could. Then a name stopped me cold. Dr. Helen Sinclair. She'd retired years ago, but her legacy had drawn me to Veritas. I could still see her in her office, surrounded by journals, telling stories of science's golden age, when integrity was the heartbeat of discovery. Her message was brief. Evelyn, your report has raised red flags with the ethics board. I always knew you were our compass. Will you see me? There's more to uncover. Helen. Her Toledo home was a haven, ivy-covered, warm with wisdom. She opened the door, older but unbowed, her eyes sharp with purpose. I felt a rush of gratitude, like reuniting with a mentor who'd seen me at my best. We sat in her sunlit living room, journals and family photos lining the shelves, a faded picture of Veritas's opening day on the mantel. OSHA found everything you reported, she said, pouring tea into delicate cups. Improper storage, missing documents, unauthorized access. I nodded, the teacup's warmth easing the knot in my chest. And the ethics board? Investigating. So is NIAID. But Evelyn, her eyes softened, searching mine. Is there more you didn't include? I hesitated, the weight of the truth heavy. The grant wasn't pulled for filing errors. I found altered trial data, impossibly perfect patient outcomes. I flagged it to Maddox 2 days before the denial. He ignored me. I slid a folder across the table. Graphs, emails, data marked in red. Helen's expression darkened, her fingers tightening on the pages. Instead of reviewing the trial, she said, he scapegoated you. I nodded, my throat tight with the memory of that day, the silence of my colleagues. Mercer was his golden ticket to Orbis. I was expendable. She closed the folder with a snap. Then we escalate. I'm forming a review committee, colleagues, ethicists, a retired auditor. We'll give this scrutiny. She paused, her voice softening. I kept records too, Evelyn. Early Orbis dealings back when they first circled Veritas. There's more here than we thought. My phone buzzed. NIH's Office of Research Integrity wanted an interview. A broader inquiry was launching. Helen smiled, calm and fierce. The dominoes are falling. Sitting there, I felt the old Veritas flicker, the one we'd both believed in. I thought of my father's journal, his words about integrity. Helen's faith felt like a bridge to that legacy, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. Driving home from Helen's, the folder beside me like a co-pilot, I felt clarity. Not peace, but purpose. The Toledo skyline glowed amber, traffic a soft hum. I remembered evenings with my father on our porch, watching the stars, his voice warm. Science is hope, Evie. Never forget that. I'd lost that hope, but tonight it stirred again. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, weary of noise. But something nudged me, maybe my mother's intuition. Dr. Evelyn Drake? Dr. James Callahan, Columbia Medical Institute. Helen Sinclair recommended you. I gripped the wheel, my heart skipping. Yes, I know Dr. Sinclair. Your report impressed us, he said. We're restructuring our ethics division and need someone like you. Can you come for an interview? I couldn't speak at first, not from shock, but relief. Not just a job, a lifeline, a chance to rebuild, to honor my father's lessons and Helen's trust. I'd be honored, I said, my voice steady despite the tears welling. 2 days later, I boarded a train to New York, no blazer, just a slate gray dress, sharp and deliberate. My bag held my ledger, my report, and my father's pen, its ink long dry, but its weight eternal. I thought of my first job after college, a cramped lab where I'd learned to question every result. That young scientist was still in me, ready for this. The Columbia interview was different. They didn't probe my motives or question my loyalty. They asked how I'd prevent another Veritas: systems, culture, leadership. I spoke of training, transparency, and the courage to challenge. They listened, nodding, and I felt seen, not as a troublemaker, but as a guardian. Dr. Callahan walked me out, his voice warm. "Your work speaks louder than any recommendation, Dr. Drake." That afternoon, they offered me Director of Research Integrity and Compliance Training, shaping policies, training scientists, building ethics from the ground up. I stood in the lobby, sunlight streaming through the windows, and let the moment sink in. This was more than a job. It was a chance to carry my parents' values forward, to make Veritas's loss mean something. I signed that night in my hotel room, tears falling, not from anger, but hope. I whispered, "This one's for Dad," my voice soft in the quiet. Back in Toledo, Veritas was crumbling. OSHA fines hit $300,000. Grants froze. Mercer was on leave, cooperating, naming Maddox and Orbis executives. A call came from Ruth Carter, a retired colleague who'd trained me early on. "I tipped OSHA after your firing," she said softly. "Your courage woke me up, Evelyn. Leo left a note on my door. They cleared your name today. Everyone knows you were right." I stood on my porch, the night air cool, clutching the note. I thought of my parents' pride, Helen's faith, the team I'd called family. I wasn't rebuilding a career. I was reclaiming my purpose. 3 days after signing with Columbia, an email arrived from Veritas's board chairman, Stephen Langford. Polite, professional, desperate. I forwarded it to my attorney with one line: "Let's talk terms." Walking into Veritas's lobby was like entering a ghost town. The hum of discovery was gone, replaced by a stale quiet. I paused by my old office, its door ajar. The coffee machine I'd used daily sat silent. My chair was pushed askew, the desk lamp still on, casting a lonely glow. I slipped a note under a paperweight. This place used to mean something. My throat tightened as I walked away, the weight of 15 years heavy in my chest. The boardroom, where Maddox had condemned me, felt smaller now. Langford cleared his throat, his face lined with fatigue. "Dr. Drake, your dismissal was unjust and flawed." I stayed silent, my hands folded, my father's pen in my pocket, a quiet anchor. I remembered the faces who'd watched me fall, their silence louder than Maddox's voice. "We've terminated Maddox," Langford continued. "Mercer's on leave, Orbis partnership severed, NIH grants frozen." I nodded, unsurprised. The truth was relentless. "We offer reinstatement, an apology, and compensation." My attorney slid papers forward. I spoke, my voice calm but firm. "I won't be returning. I've joined Columbia, but I'll consult, briefly, to rebuild your ethics and compliance." Relief flickered across their faces, but I wasn't here to ease their guilt. "I want 3 things in writing," I added. "A retraction of all allegations, a public statement on the misconduct, an independent audit shared with staff." Langford nodded, his shoulders sagging. "Done." As the meeting ended, some offered handshakes. I took a few. Others I let hang. They didn't deserve absolution. Outside, Leo waited, his lab coat slung over one shoulder. "They announced everything," he said, his voice bright with awe. "The apology, the firings, the audit. People clapped at your name." The words hit like a wave, my eyes burning. I thought of the scientists I'd trained, the nights we'd spent perfecting protocols. "Also," Leo added, a shy grin breaking through, "I got the junior staff to demand transparency. We pushed because of you." That night, I outlined a transition plan for Veritas, one last act for the lab I'd loved. I opened my father's journal, tracing his handwriting. "Make it count, Evie." I would. 6 months later, I walked into the Rayburn House office building in Washington, the air thick with security and accountability. I adjusted my mother's blue scarf, its soft weave a reminder of her strength. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what lay ahead. The plaque read, House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Hearing, Research Integrity in Corporate Labs. Inside, tension crackled. Charles Maddox sat across from me, his jaw tight, eyes darting. Orbis executives fidgeted nearby, their confidence fraying.
I didn't look at them.
I had the truth, and my father's pen in my pocket. Congresswoman Ana Diaz called me. Dr. Evelyn Drake, your statement. I adjusted the microphone, my fingers brushing the scarf. The reporter's pens paused as I locked eyes with the committee, my voice steady, but heavy with emotion. My name is Dr. Evelyn Drake. For 15 years, I served Veritas Biolabs, ensuring compliance, safety, integrity. I trained scientists, secured grants, maintained a flawless record, until I was scapegoated. Not because I failed, but because I refused to stay silent. My voice caught as I spoke of Orbis's pressure, Maddox's fraud, Mercer's compliance. I described logs manipulated in my name, compounds mishandled, patients betrayed. My father taught me science serves people, I said, my throat tight, not profit. A memory flashed, his hands guiding mine in his basement lab, his smile proud. I blinked back tears, steadying myself. A congressman asked, how widespread are these practices? Too common, I said, my voice firm but aching. When profit trumps ethics, integrity becomes optional. When whistleblowers are punished, we all lose. Silence fell, heavy and still. I thought of Tuskegee, the scandals my father had discussed over dinner, vowing we'd do better. That vow carried me now. Questions came fast. Safeguards, NIH's role, complicit silence. I answered, evidence ready, my heart racing but resolute. A congresswoman leaned forward. I read your report before this hearing, shared by an NIH contact. It's why we're here. The words landed like a gift, my chest tightening with gratitude. Leo's face flashed in my mind, his quiet wave that day in the lab. I wasn't alone. By the end, I wasn't just a whistleblower. I was a scientist who'd refused complicity. As I stepped down, my scarf brushed my cheek, and I felt my parents' strength, Helen's faith, carrying me. Helen waited outside, her smile warm. You've started a national conversation, Evelyn. A reporter called, can corporate labs be ethical? Only if we value questions over silence, I said, my voice clear despite the lump in my throat, walking into the cameras. This wasn't my story alone anymore. It was every scientist told to sign off and shut up. 1 year after my firing, I stood before a packed lecture hall at Columbia Medical Institute, facing students, researchers, journalists. The screen read, Ethical Guardianship, Reclaiming Integrity in Research. I paused, letting the silence breathe, my mother's scarf hanging in my office, a quiet anchor. My father's journal lay on my desk, its pages worn from my touch. My name is Dr. Evelyn Drake. I began, my voice steady but warm. For 15 years, I thought good science spoke for itself. I was wrong. I told them about Veritas, about silence when numbers look good, about truth in margins and instincts. I shared the pain of losing my place, my people, my purpose. My father taught me to document everything, I said, my voice catching. Not just for science, but for honor. I saw his face, his smile as we'd read journals together, his pen scratching notes. I spoke of fighting back, not for revenge, but for the scientists who'd come after me, for the patients who deserved better. A student in the front row met my eyes, her gaze fierce with pride, and I nearly faltered, overwhelmed by her belief. After Leo approached, now a grad student, his proposal in hand. That was incredible, he said. I'm on a compliance project. Will you be my advisor? I smiled, my heart swelling. I'd be honored. Another student lingered, shy. I joined science because of you, Dr. Drake, she said softly. Your story made me believe we can change things. Her words hit like sunlight, warming the ache I'd carried. That evening, in my office, a notification blinked. My manuscript, Integrity by Design, was accepted for publication, set to reach 100 institutions. An email arrived from a student who challenged her lab's protocols after my lecture, a ripple I hadn't foreseen. I opened my laptop, finding an old email from my mother sent after my father's death. He was so proud of you, Evie.
Keep shining.
Attached was a scanned note from his journal. Integrity isn't just for labs. It's for life. Tears fell as I read it, my father's voice alive in the words. Veritas was rebuilding, smaller but humbler, using my transition plan. Maddox was jailed for fraud. Orbis executives followed. Mercer lost her license, but avoided prison by cooperating. Justice whispered, in articles, audits, and the light in Leo's eyes. I leaned back, city lights shimmering outside, and felt my parents' presence, Helen's trust, the students' hope. This wasn't a comeback. It was a reclamation of my name, my work, what science could be. Somewhere, a researcher was learning to document, to question, to choose courage. Because I did. Because my father's pen still wrote truth. If this story touched you, join our community on the channel. We share stories of courage and truth every week. Hit subscribe, and let's keep the conversation alive.